Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, dignitaries, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Could you now please rise and welcome the Honourable Malcolm Turnbull, MP, Prime Minister of Australia, and Mrs. Lucy Turnbull, and His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and Mrs. Sarah Netanyahu. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Please welcome Anton Bloch, President of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, who will deliver an acknowledgement of country and lead us in the Australian National Anthem.
This evening, we gather on the traditional lands of the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. We acknowledge and give thanks to the elders and traditional owners who have cared for this land for thousands of years. We offer respect to the First Peoples who now live in the community and whose presence and cultures are vital to our nation. May we walk with care on this land that sustains their spirit and which has provided a home for our Jewish community. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the Australian National Anthem, Advance Australia Fair. Thank you. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mark Liebler, AC, National Chairman of the Australia-Israel Jewish Affairs Council.
Your Excellency, Benjamin Netanyahu, Mrs. Sarah Netanyahu, Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, Mrs. Lucy Turnbull, Premier Gladys Berejiklian, the Honourable Mark Dreyfus, representing the Leader of the Opposition, distinguished guests, all, Bruchim Habaim, welcome. Baruch haba, Rosh HaMemshalah. Welcome, Prime Minister, to this very special occasion. Indeed, Australian Jews have been looking forward to it for 7 decades. Yet, the deep and enduring ties that bind our nations go back more than 70 years. Those ties have laid the foundations for a very promising future. As both Prime Ministers here have declared, for Australia, Israel is the start-up nation that inspires. For Israel, Australia is the innovation nation ready to collaborate. That is the exciting future of hope, built on our shared past. Ladies and gentlemen, we are linked to our shared past by our personal and family stories. Outside of Israel, Australia has welcomed the largest community per capita of Holocaust survivors. And our Jewish community has one of the highest per capita rates of Zionist youth movements that engage with Israel and of Australians who make Aliyah. We are linked by our national histories. As you, Prime Minister Netanyahu, foreshadowed early this morning, stretching back for 100 years to an event we will commemorate on October 31st at the centenary of the Australian Light Horse Charge at Beersheba. And we are especially pleased, actually not pleased, but absolutely delighted that Prime Minister Turnbull, that you, Prime Minister, will lead the Australian delegation to Israel. We are linked by Australia's role as a friend of Israel and the Jewish people. To the great credit of many Australian leaders, this friendship has transcended partisan politics. 70 years ago, Australia was the first country to vote for a Jewish state at the United Nations. 55 years ago, Australia was the first country to raise the plight of Soviet Jewry at the United Nations. And some 30 years ago, Australia led the successful campaign to rescind the infamous resolution, UN resolution, equating Zionism with racism. And I must say that as president of the Zionist Federation at the time, I worked closely with Israel's ambassador to the UN, a certain Benjamin Netanyahu, who came to visit us down under at the time. He was, and he is, a passionate and eloquent advocate for Israel, a great leader of the Jewish people. It is an honour to have you on Australian soil again, Your Excellency, this time as the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. Thank you.
I now invite to the stage Danny Lamb, President of the Zionist Federation of Australia.
Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Malcolm Turnbull and Mrs Lucy Turnbull. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Mrs Sarah Netanyahu. Premier Gladys Berejiklian. Former Prime Minister John Howard. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott. Rabbi Levi Wolf. President Danny Turnbull, rabbis, ladies and gentlemen, we are indeed blessed to live in a tolerant and open Australian society, supported by successive governments over decades. Today, we are honoured that the Prime Minister of Australia, the Right Honourable Malcolm Turnbull, will address us in this magnificent place of worship, his local shul. Central Synagogue. And my congratulations go to all those people who were responsible for conceiving and achieving this incredible edifice. Our esteemed Prime Minister is a man of high moral conviction, a long-standing, true and valued friend of our Jewish community, and internationally recognised as one of the State of Israel's best and most reliable supporters. I would like to now extend a very warm welcome to Prime Minister Netanyahu and Mrs. Sarah Netanyahu on behalf of the Zionist Federation of Australia on this historic occasion of the first official visit by a serving Prime Minister of Israel to Australia. It is indeed a great honour for our community that you have taken the opportunity to address us, and we are absolutely delighted that you are here with us. Prime Minister Netanyahu, your unwavering commitment to the security and strength of the State of Israel, in addition to its development and innovation, is matched with a deep regard for the security and well-being of Jewish communities abroad, including those that are as far away as ours in Australia. And those who know you know just how committed you are to the future of the diaspora communities and the strengthening of their connection to our ancestral home, Israel. Prime Minister, your audience today is comprised of representatives of Jewish communities throughout Australia who have gathered here in Sydney to be part of this special and glorious event. It includes many community leaders and supporters, Jewish and non-Jewish, who all share a deep commitment to the State of Israel and to Jewish continuity. Thank you for your ongoing interest and great support for the Jewish Agency for Israel and the World Zionist Organization, and for programs that strengthen the diaspora. Programs such as Birthright and Masa, which are managed in Australia by the Zionist Federation, are well-established pathways that build a Jewish future. Ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Netanyahu served his first term as Prime Minister from 1996 to 1999 and was elected again in 2009. He has thus far served a total of 4 terms, 3 of them consecutive. And as of today, he is the second longest serving Prime Minister in Israel's history. As we approach Israel's 69th Yom HaAtzmaut, Day of Independence, and the 50th anniversary of a united Jerusalem, we are truly blessed, and we can rightfully recite, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'echiyanu v'kiyemanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord our King, who has given us life, sustained us, and brought us to this time. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the Honourable Malcolm Turnbull MP, Prime Minister of Australia.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much. It's always wonderful to be here at Central, in this beautiful shul, in the heart of my electorate. We talked today at lunch about the Mishpacha. This is the heart of the Mishpacha of Wentworth, believe me. And the last time I was here, Lucy and I were here with Levi, or Rabbi, and Hani. It was the 7th night of Hanukkah. And I even danced with Levi. I don't think we're doing that tonight, too many people perhaps. But nonetheless, it was a very important night. Of course, every night of Hanukkah is important. But I came here to the shul with a message of absolute solidarity with the State of Israel. I came here with a message of solidarity on behalf of the Australian government in the wake of that UN resolution which was so regrettable. A resolution we would never support. My government will not support, any more than the government of John Howard would or the government of Tony Abbott would, a resolution so one-sided, attributing fault only to the State of Israel. That has no contribution to make to the peace process. It was an unfortunate resolution. We regret it, and we disassociated ourselves from it in our public statements and here, right here in this shul. But you know, we have spoken of security a lot today, both at the lunch and, of course, Bibi and I have spoken about that in our meetings, and it is plainly central. The first duty, as I said at our press conference, the first duty of every government, of every Prime Minister, every President, is the safety of the people of the nation they lead. And so the fundamental requirement of what we hope will be a negotiated outcome between Israel and the Palestinians, a two-state solution negotiated between the parties. But the fundamental condition, the foundation of that must be the safety, the security of the State of Israel and its people. And so we too deplore the efforts to delegitimise the State of Israel. We deplore the boycott campaigns. We stand with Israel. We are a committed and a consistent friend. We have been so from the beginning, and we will always be so. Now, I want to say, however, as I observed in the article that was published in the newspaper today, in the Australian today, it's easy to see Israel and its situation entirely through the prism of security. That's inevitable, I suppose, given the existential threat that Israel faces, and given the miraculous success of Israel, wrought by the determination, the enterprise, the indefatigable courage of its people, not simply to establish the state of Israel, that a miracle in itself, but to maintain it, to continue it, to enhance it, for it to succeed again and again against extraordinary odds. That has been an extraordinary achievement, wondrous, miraculous. And now we see the state of Israel leading the world in the most important technologies of the 21st century. Surrounded by foes. I said today at the lunch, which I know many of you have been at, we're at earlier today in the city, I said that, you know, if plagiarism is the sincerest form of flattery, and I think it must be, then Israel should be sincerely flattered, because so many countries, including our own, seek to capture some of that extraordinary, innovative chutzpah which enables Israelis in a nation, just until the recent discovery of gas, I might add, but until then, absolutely devoid of natural resources other than the brilliance and the enterprise of its people, to enable Israel to develop that culture of innovation, to lead in technology, to recognise, as Bibi said today, that once a nation has achieved that middle income status, to get from there to greater success and greater heights, you need to be competitive, you need to be productive, and the key to that is innovation. And that is why it is a central part of my government's economic plan, because I know, and we all know, that that is the key to our success. And it's not a theoretical thing any more than free trade is a theoretical thing, of which we also spoke. All of those open markets, innovation, productivity, competitiveness, all of that enables us to deliver the greater and greater opportunities for our children and grandchildren in the years ahead. So we have so much to work on together, so much more collaboration to undertake. We stand together in the battle against terrorism. We are in the front line, each of us in our own theatres, and each of us indeed in the Middle East. We stand in the front line against terrorism. We are united by shared values, democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. They tie us together, and of course, all of you. The extraordinary people-to-people links, the Jewish Australian community, without whom you could not imagine modern Australia. As I said today, I salute you and I thank you. You have been remarkable. You have helped us make Australia the extraordinary nation that it is. And we could never have done it without the brilliance and the enterprise of the Australian Jewish community. So here, in the Mishpacha of Wentworth, with so many visitors, including we have Julian Leeser, my federal parliamentary colleague, who's one of our distinguished Jewish parliamentarians, who's from Sydney. But then coming up from the Mishpacha of Melbourne, we have Josh Frydenberg, the Minister for Energy and Environment. We have Mark Dreyfus, and of course, we have Michael Danby as well. And I see Richard Miles has joined us as well, also from Melbourne, so that is good. And we have our remarkable, talented Premier Gladys Berejiklian. So we're all here. We're all here to hear from you, Bibi, Prime Minister. It's been a very productive day. We have more discussions to go over the next few days. but we have a lot of work to do together. Mark Leeser asked a question at the lunch about how important were people-to-people links in collaboration on technology, in innovation. And the truth is they are absolutely critical. There's no substitute for it. And that's why this visit is so important. It has taken 70 years. Mark has been uncharacteristically patient. He had. So, but he may not be, he certainly won't wait another 70 years. So I think we'll have to increase the tempo of visits. But we will be there in Beersheba in October and we'll be there. And I might say, and Bibi has promised everybody a horse, so it'll be a great event. Thank you very much indeed, Levi. It's always wonderful to be here, Honey. It's wonderful to be here in this beautiful shul. Thank you so much here in the heart of our community, in the heart of my community. I feel very much at home. This is very Hamisher. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Turnbull. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honour to introduce His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. I want to bring all of you greetings from Jerusalem, our eternal capital, never to be divided again. I want to thank Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull for the extraordinary welcome that he and his wife Lucy have shown Sarah and me and our entire delegation. There is no better friend for the State of Israel. But he's had some standard bearers before him, and that's John Howard and Tony Abbott, former prime ministers, who are with us today. Premier Berejiklian, I have had a lot of people stutter at my name for a while, but I hope I pronounced your name correctly. And all the representatives and officials who are here, our respective ambassadors, Mark Leeser, Danny Lamb, I want to thank you for your many kindnesses over the years, your friendship. It's an honor to be the first Israeli Prime Minister to visit Australia. I have to say that I hope the next trip doesn't take another 68 years. I agree completely with Malcolm Turnbull that people-to-people contacts, that the ability to meet, see each other, hear each other, talk to one another is crucial. And for this, we need the Dreamliner. And I'll say it 5 more times before I leave, because you in Australia are used to flying in your own country for several hours. It takes 4 minutes to cross the State of Israel. So we're not used to it. A Dreamliner would help us acclimate. I want to salute this Jewish community, which is unusually committed to the State of Israel to the Jewish people. You've shown it time and time again. You show it here today, even though I think we'll have some problem with the Jewish community in Melbourne, but that's for the next trip. For the next trip. They're wonderful people, and you have been stalwart champions of our alliance. Israel and Australia are two vibrant democracies. This is not something that is self-evident. Democracy has to be nourished. It has to be protected. It has to be maintained. In the 19th century, the great English writer George Eliot wrote, there will be, she said, in the van of the Middle East, amid the despotism of the East, a great beacon of freedom. A great beacon of freedom, she said prophetically. And indeed, this is exactly what has happened. Israel is a beacon of freedom, of tolerance, of progress, in a very dark expanse that I hope and I believe will change as many Arab countries understand that Israel is not their enemy, but their vital and indispensable ally in warding off the barbarism that threatens all of us. There is, I think, an opening, as Malcolm and I discussed, for the first time in my lifetime, because the Arabs understand that Israel could be a key to their future. I'm not looking at reality through rose-colored glasses. I'm, I think, a realist, but as a realist, I see not only challenge, but opportunity that grows from this challenge. And I think that if anyone understands the hopes of the people of Israel for peace and security, it is you. You have shared this hope and this dream with us day in, day out. And you have this strong bond with Israel. You have relatives and you have friends. I have friends and relatives here, believe it or not. And you have them in Israel in abundance. So I want to thank you for your consistent support over the years. A few days ago, I visited the Jewish community in Singapore. There's a Jewish community in Singapore. And like the joke, they have two synagogues, one they go to and the one they don't go to. An amazing community. And a few months ago, I visited Jews in Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, two Muslim countries. They sang Jewish songs in Muslim countries. And that's the kind of coexistence and tolerance that we like to see everywhere. Jewish customs vary, but the spirit of our people is universal. And there's a question that many people ask: why did the Jews survive? What is the secret of their survival and their success? Well, I had an inkling of that when I was first elected prime minister and I visited a small country, China. And the president of China, the leader of China at the time, Jiang Zemin, he said to me, you know, I really admire the Jewish people. And I said, I really admire the Chinese people. And he said, well, the Jews and the Chinese are two of the oldest peoples on earth. And I said, that's true. And being not that experienced, I added the Indians too. But, you know, it goes back 5,000 years, in our case, almost 4,000 years. And he said, yes, this is true. And I said, but there's a difference. He said, what's the difference? I said, well, how many Chinese are there? He said, well, 1.2 billion. I said, how many Indians? He said, about 1 billion. And then I said, how many Jews? And he said, I don't know. I said, well, there were about 13 million Jews at the time, 13 million Jews. And there was absolute silence in the room. You could see, you could hear the jaws drop, because that's, you know, a suburb of Beijing. And I said, Mr. President, isn't it odd? We've been around for thousands of years. You exceed 1 billion, and we're only 13 million. He said, what happened? And I said, a lot of things happened, but they boil down to one thing. You, the Chinese, kept China. The Indians kept India. And we, the Jewish people, lost our land and were scattered to the far corners of the earth. And for the last 2,000 years, we've had one goal: to come back to our ancient homeland and reconstitute our life, build our own state, define our own future, control our own destiny. This is the source, this is the thrust of Jewish history. Now, by all accounts, we should have disappeared, because most nations in antiquity do not exist anymore. There are exceptions, but they're very large exceptions, and very few. Most nations disappeared. Nations go through predictable cycles. They're born, they flower, they shrivel, they die. But the Jews are different. The Jews refuse to die. They're reborn again and again and again. And throughout the centuries, our people never succumbed to their fate. No matter how large the oppression, no matter how great the oppression and the persecution, generation after generation, Jews said, next year in Jerusalem, next year in Jerusalem. We never gave up the dream. And finally, after 20 centuries, led by a modern Moses named Theodore Herzl, changed our history, a prophet of old who reemerged and worked for a brief 8 years and changed the course of the Jewish people. We came back to our land, reconstituted our sovereignty, built an army second to none in its courage, its ability to defend our people, its willingness to step into the breach. Built an economy that is now becoming an innovation nation, an example for the entire world. And you know, there used to be a joke when I was a young man in Israel, growing up. How do you make a small fortune in Israel? You start with a big fortune. No longer. Some big fortunes are made in Israel because of the ingenuity of our people. And guess what? We liberated the economy and allowed the natural enterprise, the natural capabilities that are inherent in our history, in our traditions, to burst forward. So we've built this future. And I was approached by African diplomats in the UN a few months ago. You know, I give this speech at the UN every year. But this year was different because so many of the African countries want to partake of our experiences, of our innovation. And we had an exhibit there of Israeli technology, absolutely amazing, amazing stuff. And one African leader said to me, can you tell me the secret? He wanted to know the secret. And I said, you mean the secret of our success? And he said, I want to understand how Israel is able to do what it does. And I said, look, it's a combination of two things. A continual quest for the future with a deep regard for the past, a deep regard for our roots. It's like a tree that has deep roots in the land and yet seeks to grow the branches all the time, reaches upward. And it's that combination of tradition and innovation that makes Israel what it is, and make the people of Israel what they are, and make you the community that you are. We respect our traditions, we respect our roots, and yet we are constantly inquisitive, constantly seeking to improve the life of our people and the life of all mankind. This is what characterizes the Jewish people. This is what characterizes the Jewish state. Now, I know that we are much maligned in the United Nations. I salute you, Malcolm Turnbull, and the governments of Australia who've stood up time and time again against this demonization, including recently you refuse to accept this hypocrisy. And standing up for Israel means standing up for simple truths. It doesn't mean that we don't have our imperfections. Which country is perfect? Well, Australia is pretty close. But none of us are perfect, but we seek all the time to improve. We seek all the time to do better. We seek to do better for all our peoples, and we also want Israel to be the home of all Jews. I want every Jew in the world, every Jewish man and woman, to feel comfortable in the state of Israel. I also think that we have a battle against those who seek to demonize our people and the resurgent anti-Semitism that we see in many parts of the world. It is something that we need to fight together. I think this is important in Europe, it's important in America. It's very important that President Trump took a strong stand against anti-Semitism, and it's important that we all continue to do so in the years ahead. So we have performed miracles, but we've performed miracles because we're committed to our destiny. I want all of you to come to Israel. I want you to visit your friends and your families. I want you to walk the streets of the old city in Jerusalem, hike in the Golan. By the way, the Golan will never go back to Syria. It will always be a part of the state of Israel. Spend time with our brave young soldiers. Get to know the land. See this miracle. See the land of Israel. See the people of Israel. The state of Israel lives. The people of Israel thrive. Am Yisrael Chai. We are part of you. You are part of us. Thank you for this warm welcome. And this year in Jerusalem, with Prime Minister Turnbull in Beersheba, we'll get a horse for every one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. תודה רבה. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Rabbi Wolf and Chazan Shimon Farkas, who will recite the prayer for the State of Israel, and please remain seated.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, the last time you walked into the synagogue was around 16 years ago on a private visit to Australia. It was close to midnight. I opened the shul to be able to show you the newly rebuilt sanctuary that had just been completed. I recall standing right here at this pulpit with you. You looked at me and inquired. You said, "Rabbi, how many seats are in the sanctuary?" I said, "Roughly about 2,000. I'll never forget your response. Oy vey. It's easier to make peace in the Middle East than it is to keep 2,000 Jews quiet." You're right. Prime Minister is right. Jews are famous for many things. Being quiet is not one of our virtues. The reality is, there are so few in the world that come to stand for our causes. We don't have the luxury to remain silent. Adoni Rosh HaMemshala, here in Australia, is the exception. We are blessed in the leadership of our Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, to have someone who is not only a leader, but a visionary, so that when the ugly face of anti-Semitism rears its shocking face, this is a man who has stood up to our injustice. Here sits a man who has stood up for truth, Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. And Prime Minister Bibi would know that that's not always very easy. And so today, as we conclude this momentous and historical event in the Central Synagogue, I pray that God gives each of you the strength to courageously lead your respective countries in these most trying times. As the Rebbe blessed you, Prime Minister Bibi, and I echo the Rebbe's words, that you shall be a candle of light, of truth to the wider world. Today, I say to Prime Minister Malcolm and Prime Minister Bibi, may God bless you to personify and be that very candle, to illuminate to our countries strength, security, and a desperately needed peace. May Hashem bless our home, Australia, and may the Almighty bless our eternal homeland, Israel. Amen. Kindly rise for a special prayer.
Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo. Banech, banech, et medinat Yisrael, reshit tzmichat geulateinu, hagen alea be'evrat chazdecha, ufnos alea sukat shlomecha. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo. צאן ישראל וגואלו ונאמר אמן. כל עוד בלבב פנימה נפש יהודי הומיה ולפתי מזרח קדימה עין לציון סופיה עוד לא עמדה תקוותנו התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים